From the land of lakes, this is 10,000 Takes. Brought to you by Minnesota Score Radio. Wally and Eric back for yet another day, yet another week, yet another month. As we slice and dice the always busy, always topical, super saturated Minnesota sports scene. So, Wally, welcome to May. And, of course, front and center in these parts as far as grabbing headlines have been the Minnesota Wild and the Minnesota Timberwolves as they both have embarked on playoff runs. And, you look at the Timberwolves and this young, explosive, confident superstar, Anthony Edwards. He's been spectacular against the LA Lakers. I think it's safe to say they have an ant problem in Los Angeles. They have not figured out a way to slow this guy down. So it got me to thinking. In my opinion, maybe you disagree. I think there's three elite stars right now in the Twin Cities from a male sports perspective. Ant, Kirill Kaprizov, and Justin Jefferson. Yeah. You could probably throw Nafisa Collier into the mix, too, with the WNBA's links. But of all of those, who would you rather see if you had to pay?
If I
Which
had
you
to
don't.
Pay.
You get those credentials and those cushy sweet seats.
Oh, boy.
But for me,
Look
it's
talking.
Ant. I think he's at the top of the food chain in the Twin Cities right now.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's exciting to watch. He's fun to watch. He's explosive. He's athletic. He wants the ball in crunch time. He wants to be a difference maker. And I think he's a pretty good team player, too, as evidenced by the number of assists he's been piling up. The question, in my mind, is, and there have been, obviously, he's had his trip falls along the way. I think he led the NBA in a category that he doesn't want to. That would be technical fouls this year. He rolled up a bunch of those and paid out a lot of dough to the NBA and fines and so on and so forth. But my question is, are the Timberwolves going to be being able to hang on to this guy long term? Because obviously, and I said this a few years ago, I said, I think he has the athleticism of a Michael Jordan. Does he have, what it takes to be a champion like Michael Jordan? But are they going to be able to hang on to Anthony Edwards long term? Let's hope so.
Well, at this point in time, everything he said is that he loves being in Minnesota. He doesn't need to go to New York City or Los Angeles or Chicago or Miami or some splashier market where maybe he would garner even more headlines. Look, the NBA nation knows about this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you know about Giannis. He's in Milwaukee. I mean, you don't have to be in a major market to cash in on endorsement deals and get the max deal from your team. I think the key is, at least in my estimation, as long as the Timberwolves are all in from the ownership perspective. What drove KG out of Minnesota? KG loved being in Soda.
I think he wanted to stay here.
He did, but the team started to unravel.
That's true.
And there was no commitment to trying to win that title. In the end, I think there was for a while. They knocked on the door in 2004. So then finally KG realized, I'm not going to get a ring here. And they said to him, you want to go to Boston? And he looked at Ray Allen, and he looked at Paul Pierce, and he looked at all those banners they have at TD Garden, and he said, yeah, I'll go to Boston. And he got his ring there. So as long as the Timberwolves stay in the mix competing for a championship, I don't see Ant going. They're certainly not going to push him out the door. They wouldn't be that stupid, would they? I sure hope not. And I think Ant is built for moments to succeed when the spotlight is the brightest. Now, we do have to pump the brakes on the fact that he hasn't gotten to the NBA Finals yet.
Right.
He doesn't have his ring, so this process has to, take care of itself. But I can see him staying here if the Timberwolves do their part.
Well, Tim Connolly, obviously, and Chris Finch, I'm assuming had something to do with it, believes in him. Because you would not have traded, you would think, Karl Anthony Towns away if you didn't think that this guy was your guy, right? You would have done the opposite. Right. If you're trying to relieve some cap room and you're trying to figure out how you're going to fit all these pieces into that puzzle, the salary cap wise, and you decide, okay, we're going to trade away Karl Anthony Towns, who arguably, up until the point he was traded to New York, outside of Kevin Garnett, who had a better career as a Minnesota Timberwolf?
Possibly Kevin Love.
Kevin Love, but his was for a shorter period of time.
Right. And I think, I believe before Dallas dealt Luka to the LA Lakers, I think they made a call to Minnesota inquiring about Ant. And the Timberwolves said, no, we like Ant. And
I'm glad they did that.
Yeah, and the one thing about Ant is he's not only is he gifted athletically, but we're seeing his basketball IQ grow and grow and grow. What he did in Game 4 on what was not called a foul initially, looked like LeBron got, the block, hand part of the ball. Ant's going like this. No, got my wrist.
Yeah.
Wrist isn't part of the ball, and they got that call reversed. That, along with the trip they didn't call on Luka, was huge.
Yeah. Well, Luka tripped. He stepped on Jaden's foot anyway.
Well, the NBA admitted they were wrong in that case, so take it up with the association.
All right. We're going to talk some more sports with a guy named Joe. Joe Schmit is our guest coming up.
All right, we are 10K Takes, your Ant ticket.
Seeing clearly matters. Being seen matters more. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
In Lakeville, Minnesota, dozens of meeting venues are ready to host your next corporate event, banquet, and holiday party. Lakeville has unique conference facilities, a variety of hotels, an abundance of team-building options, and dining that are sure to impress. For suggestions that suit your needs, please call the Lakeville Convention and Visitors Bureau at 952-469-2020 or go to visitlakeville.org. Lakeville, we mean business.
When you see somebody who's a great skater, you can see in their individual rhythm. My name is Christian Grunna. I am owner, head coach, operator, main instructor for Grunna Power Skating. We had a history of not just speed skating, but auto racing in our family, so we're always interested in being fast. I want every player that comes my way to develop their skills, but also grow confidence in themselves as a human being.
And we are Minnesota Scores 10,000 Takes, and a guy who's done about 10,000 TV shows is going to join us now. Our friend and longtime KSTP-TV sports director and anchor, Joe Schmit. Joe, you're rounding it up this week, your last go-round. What are the feelings going through your head as you come down this final stretch, or as you know that it is now over?
Well, I told my wife this morning, I said, I feel like an actor in a movie right now, because it's like, is this really me right now who's leaving the business after all these years? As both of you guys know, being in the business, it becomes part of your DNA and part of who you are and what you are, despite what you try maybe not to have happen. So that part of it has been really interesting. And now I have people coming up and saying goodbye to me. And I find myself getting emotional. And it's like, it's a little bit like your own funeral, except hopefully I'm not going to die yet. But it is. People are very, very nice. And it's been very, very rewarding.
Joe, let's go over the technological changes that you've seen. We've seen going back a few decades, 3/4-inch tape, big decks, tapes getting jammed, and then you go to a smaller size tape. And now it's all digital. Live shots are with a backpack, not a minivan. I mean, it's changed at warp speed, hasn't it?
I actually worked at the last TV station in the country that did their news with film, WKBT in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I went to school at La Crosse, and I got hired between my junior and senior year to be the weekend sports anchor. And I would shoot film, and I learned how to process film, which is kind of how I got the job. But when I moved to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, that was my first time dealing with videotape. And then we had the big 3/4-inch tapes. You had the big deck with it. Everything was heavy. The cameras, these big, remember the old TK-76, the old blue cameras? Those things weighed they were like a refrigerator on your shoulder. And anyway, and now, you literally, I've shot stories with my phone. I literally have shot stories that have gone on our air with a phone, and we've gone live everywhere with a backpack, where before you used to need the big satellite truck that was invented here by Hubbard Broadcasting. So the technology has changed everything.
You know, Eric and I both worked for Hubbard. I worked for him for an extended period for 12 years. And I got nothing but good things to say about the Hubbards. You obviously have a 40-year relationship, so that's a little different. But, I hear people that have poked at the Hubbards and how they've run things at KSTP over the years. But I tell you what, one day when I walked into work, I think this was like in about 2000, and I saw a check in there. It was about $10,000 that he handed out to basically everybody based on seniority. I had nothing bad to say ever again. Not that I ever did before, but I had nothing but good things to say about the Hubbards.
Well, it's interesting because, all the other stations in town are owned by the big conglomerates,
Yes.
CBS, what is Tegna now? I forgot what they call that, but they're all owned, Fox, and those become big corporate giants. And with the Hubbards upstairs, we've gotten like answers right away, and we've done stories and innovation and things that the other stations can't do. So I always thought working for a local owner was really a great advantage. And on top of that, the Hubbards are good people. They really treat people well, and my wife and I, once again, we've had some pretty good conversations. We always said this. We always said if any of our kids ever got sick or we ever really needed something, we knew the Hubbards would have our back. And I can guarantee you, if you work for one of the big corporate giants, you're a number there. They're going to look at the numbers and see how much money it's going to cost you, and they'll get rid of you.
Yeah. And Joe, certainly you've seen the relationships with the local teams also change over the decades. I remember when I was at Channel 4 and I talked to the old photog Al Crocker, and he would tell me stories about flying on the Minnesota Vikings team jet to wherever they played on the road and then rushing the film back to get it processed. And it's not as cozy anymore, is it, with reporters, TV, newspaper, radio folks with the teams? They keep us at bay, don't they?
Oh, yeah. We used to fly with the team all the time, and that was really great because it was, basically first class flying. You get all the food. We got the same food that the players got, and it would be like incredible how much food you'd get after a game. And we'd eat all this food. I mean, they would bring, and it would be like steak and lobster would be the post-game meal on an airplane. But then you'd get cheeseburgers when you walked on, and they had pop and soda and beer, whatever you wanted to. And then these guys would get done with land, and they'd say, "Where are we going to eat?" "Well, let's go to Murray's." We'd be like, "Go to eat? I can hardly move." But I think the other thing that's changed, Eric, quite frankly, is the teams now basically compete against us. They have their own media. They want clicks on their website. They want clicks on their social media. They have their own shows. As a matter of fact, the Vikings Entertainment Network, certainly is the biggest sports department in town. And so that has changed. And then the athletes themselves, they all have their people. Back in the old days, I can remember going in the locker room and interviewing Tommy Kramer. There'd be a group around Tommy Kramer. Now the quarterback's protected. He talks twice a week and only twice a week. Things have changed, but what business hasn't changed today?
Yeah, for sure. I remember those days at Mankato. Boy, we ate with the players, if you recall, back in the day. Steak and lobster, day one, always in Mankato, right? That was the go-to. Joe, your fondest memories covering what? What sticks out in your mind over these 40 years? I know what it does for me, obviously the 2 World Series, but 87 and 91. But what sticks out in your mind for you?
I will say, the 2 World Series were incredible. The homecoming in 87 was incredible. But I decided to kind of look at it a little bit differently because those are really obvious. And yes, those were great. But, in 1991, we had everything here. We had the U.S. Open, we had the World Series, we had the Super Bowl, we had the Stanley Cup Finals. We had it all here within one calendar year. That was incredible. But I also got to cover the Little League World Series. And I got to go to Cooperstown several times for a Hall of Fame, including Joe Mauer, who I interviewed in high school, and there saw him go into the Baseball Hall of Fame and covered his entire career. So I kind of figured out it all boils down to relationships. The relationships that you have. And they're not always necessarily with the players and coaches. Sometimes it's the PR guys, and sometimes it's the trainers and the staff, because you're around those guys all the time. You guys, Bob Hagan. I've spent more time with Bob Hagan than I've done like my closest friends in the world, and Bob's become a close friend because of that. So that's what I kind of think it all boiled down to: the relationships and the really good stories that you were able to tell and lucky enough to tell.
And Joe, you might be walking away, but you're going to have your fingers in a lot of different things and be working on documentaries. And I know you have the Joe Mauer book, but can you put into perspective what Sid Hartman did from a longevity standpoint, where he writes a column until the end, age 100? I think that's the bar of longevity, isn't it?
Sid was amazing, and I can remember the younger Sid when he's still at his fastball. He could be pretty incorrigible, and he was so dang competitive. I can remember, speaking of Tommy Kramer, I remember Rob Lear and Sid Hartman one time were interviewing Tommy Kramer after a game, and Sid, of course, liked to get his stupid big microphone with his tape recorder that was about that big. And he had it up there, and Rob was mad because Sid kept putting the mic in Tommy Kramer's face, and he'd be whacking it down and whacking it down. They got the sword fight in front of Tommy Kramer. But here's my ultimate Sid story. Sid was 98, covering the Vikings, and you guys both know when you take the elevator down from the press box at U.S. Bank Stadium, you got about 50 yards to walk to get to the press conference room.
Right.
I'm on the elevator with Sid. Sid has a walker by now. And I'm standing next to Bob Sansevier. All of a sudden, the elevator door opens. We're walking towards the Vikings locker room. All of a sudden, Sansevier looks at me. He goes, "We better speed up. Sid's pulling away from us." As God is my witness, Sid in his walker was walking faster than Sansevier and I, 40 years younger than he was. Crazy.
And it's all true. Every one of the Sid stories you hear is true. Oh, boy. Well, Joe, I know you got some speaking engagements that you do, as well as the book and some other things coming up. Best of luck. We appreciate you stopping by, and appreciate the partnership that you gave me when we started the magazine back in the day, and all the good things that we've seen together here over the years.
Well, a salute to you two guys. You guys are hustlers, and you go out there the way you do it in the media, in today's new media world. You don't do it without hustling and loving the sport and having a passion for it. So the years you've been putting together on it, congratulations. It's not always easy. It's sometimes people think it's a little more glamorous than it is, but congrats to you guys too.
All right.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. He is Joe
Thank you,
Schmit,
guys.
longtime sports anchor and sports director at KSTP-TV and radio. He did for a while over there as well. More here on 10,000 Takes after this time.
Great touchdown. Can I have a quick word with you? You are in jeopardy of failing my class. Change this or no more football.
If you want to be a great athlete, you have to study too.
I do want to play. I saw an ad on social media about reading out loud literacy program. Maybe they can help.
You did it.
When you read, you know. According to the 2021 to 2022 Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments, just 31% of black students are proficient in reading, compared to 59% of white students. In addition, just 20% of black students are proficient in math, in comparison to 54% of their white counterparts. The more you read, the more you know. Reading out loud literacy can help you. Visit llcooljorg.com for more information. Reading Out Loud Literacy is sponsored by City of Minneapolis Community Trauma Response Fund.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
don't you try these?
It isn't just about vision. It's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
When you see somebody who's a great skater, you can see in their individual rhythm. My name is Christian Grunna. I am owner, head coach, operator, main instructor for Grunna Power Skating. We had a history of not just speed skating, but auto racing in our family, so always interested in being fast. I want every player that comes my way to develop their skills, but also grow confidence in themselves as a human being.
"10,000 Takes" continues along. Our thanks to Joe Schmit for joining us during his final week as a regular sportscaster over at Channel 5. Joe is leaving right in the midst of a Twins season that, boy, I tell you, up and down, in and out. But the up part has been interestingly catapulted by guys that most Twins fans probably never heard of. Roger Clemens' kid is part of the Twins.
Cody.
Yes, Cody Clemens. One guy that they have heard of course, who's finally awakened, Carlos Correa. He's starting to hit. But this has been a really strange season. I mean, they've been really bad, and then they've been really good.
Yeah, lately they've gotten hot. And, you know, to sweep the LA Angels, that was a huge weekend for the Minnesota Twins.
Oh.
And they won 2 out of 3 previously against the Chicago White Sox. They began the week with a thumping of your Cleveland Guardians. In fact, I was at part of that Angels game Friday. They put up 11, which for this Twins team is, you know, epic.
That's like 4 or 5 games worth.
Well, then they put another 11 on the board in Cleveland. So maybe these bats are heating up with the weather. Correa could not possibly keep hitting 170. Carlos Correa is much too good for that. And I think historically he tends to start slow with the bat. Byron Buxton also, he's out there playing. That's the good news. And boy, I'll tell you what, his warp speed is so much fun to watch. At the Friday game, he goes oppo, he hits a ball down the right field line, and it's a stand-up triple. I mean, it wasn't even close that he wasn't going to get to third base. We've seen him use his speed on different occasions already. He saved a win against the Chicago White Sox, and then on Sunday he gets the day off. Harrison Bader goes to center field, and he turns into Buxton with a sprawling grab to rob Tyler Ward of the Angels. So, and let's not forget, Joe Ryan was brilliant last Sunday. Bailey Ober started the road trip off on a good note. And the bullpen's starting to get a little better.
Well, they get better when your starting pitchers don't have to pitch as much.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the key. And the other thing is when you score some runs, it takes some heat off of your pitchers. So there's a lot that goes into it. I wonder if the Twins discovered those torpedo bats. Maybe that's what's helping them.
Get a shipment, yeah.
Do any of them have you noticed any of them using a torpedo
I don't know.
bat?
I haven't heard any buzz about it. I would think that would be major news here that the Pohlads, wrote a check and got the torpedo bats into the dugout. I think, but maybe Trevor Larnach's using one. He had some pop in the homestand, and
we don't want to credit the actual Twins players. We want to credit the
well, they're in a division where they should be able to compete. Detroit is good. I think Cleveland's good, but they're not elite.
No, not
Kansas City's good too, but not elite.
All right, well, we're going to find out if you have an elite take in Takes of the Day. That's coming up next. Stay with us.
Finding the ideal place to stay is important for business travelers. Lakeville, Minnesota is conveniently located off I-35, just south of the Twin Cities, with a variety of hotel choices. Lakeville offers convenient amenities such as shopping, walking trails, golf, and more. Our unique meeting spaces, historic downtown, live music, and over 60 dining options are sure to impress. Book your next stay in Lakeville and experience convenience, comfort, and quality. Find your perfect hotel at visitlakeville.org.
Wally and Eric from 10,000 Takes here in the land of lakes. And if you want sports of all sorts, check us out. We cover all the bases, all the teams in the great state of Minnesota.
Vikings, Twins, Wild, Gophers, Timberwolves, Loons, you name it, we do it. Late night Saturday night on Fox 9 Plus and on the Fox local app.
Seeing clearly matters. Being seen matters more. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
Dream jobs can feel out of reach when reading is a challenge.
Reading out loud, literacy will literally make sense of the things you see. Reading out loud, literacy will literally make sense of the things you see. Minnesota is approaching.
According to literacyactionnetwork.org, Minnesota is approaching a worker shortage due to an aging and retiring workforce and the growing skill needs of employers resulting from globalization and technological change. As it stands, Minnesota's adult workforce will not be able to accommodate the employee needs of employers. Nearly 1 in 5 Minnesotans over age 25 do not have a high school diploma, and many who do still lack the basic skills necessary for employment. Learning to read is fun and essential. Reading Out Loud Literacy is sponsored by City of Minneapolis Community Trauma Response Fund.
10K Takes on television as we wrap up yet another episode. Big shout out to the viewers in the Twin Ports and the Twin Cities, up and down the I-35 corridor. And they're soon going to find out what your mood is. Takes of the day. Angry American, cranky Yankee, beaming brownie with Shadur Sanders now. What is it?
Oh, boy, please. Well, I don't know if you've had a hoop in your driveway shooting baskets when you were a kid, or you had one for your kids. I know I always had one growing up, and I had one for my kids. Heck, I still have one now. Well, there is a conflict going on in the city of St. Louis Park. A family put a hoop up, and they had a new family move in next door about a year ago. And the family who moved in next door, not happy with the basketball hoop. And as a matter of fact, they made them move it. It was 6 inches too close to the property line. So the Moding family, Lily Moding and her family, they moved it off of that 6-inch line, moved it closer into their own property. Well, now they have filed a temporary injunction, and they filed a lawsuit against the city of St. Louis Park and against the Moding family. Are you kidding me? So their 2 young boys, if this temporary injunction goes through, will not be able to shoot baskets in their own driveway because the neighbors are upset that they'll have to fetch the ball in their yard. Are you kidding me? Get a life, next door neighbor in St. Louis Park. There's been no comment thus far from the neighbors. But yes, they have filed a lawsuit, and they are trying to prevent kids from shooting hoops in their own driveway. Unbelievable.
As the great Dick Enberg once said, oh my.
Yes.
Yeah, he's peeking the red. He's an angry American. For good reason.
The dumbest thing I've ever heard.
All right. Well, my take of the day, look, if you want good amusement and theater, reading newspapers online, let me suggest going to the New York Post. Now, a lot of what they have is sensationalism, and I certainly don't agree with a lot of their viewpoints. But I happened to check out the New York Post earlier this week, and boy, it entertained me for a good hour. There's a big splashy article on Brett Favre. There's going to be a Netflix special. Jen Sturger, the gal he texted, former Jets sideline reporter, says he ruined her life.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And so I'm reading these articles, and they're juicy, and they're deep, and they're full of all of this and all of that. And then they got the splashy headline for Bill Belichick, 73 years old, and his girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, who's 24. And the article talks about how, according to sources, Jordan is controlling Bill Belichick. The ultimate control freak is now being controlled by his young gal pal. I got to tell you, the New York Post, sometimes, if you just want to laugh and be entertained, check it out, nypost.com. I can't believe I'm giving them a free plug, but I just did.
I hope they write us a check.
Yeah. All right, we got to go. Thanks for tuning us in. This is 10K Takes Your Sports.